May I suggest a toast to all the forgotten actors and actresses of the past, to all those whose only permanence lies in the memories of those who saw and loved them, to their days and nights in stuffy lodgings, to their struggles, their adversities, and their successes.
That's excellent.
It's quite a rare vintage, but I have another bottle. It's yours.
Oh.
Well, thank you, Mr. Brankner. My husband knows very little about wine.
Oh, I don't know. I used to have a chart, you know, showing the good years and the bad, all the fine vintages. Oh, but Carol's quite right. I could never remember which year was which. Anyway, I know I like this.
People are much like wine, don't you think? Good vintages and bad.
It isn't really quite that simple, is it?
Now, don't get my husband started on people, Mr. Brankner. He has some rather startling theories about them.
I know. It's evident in everything he writes. He knows things not here, but here. He writes for the actor. He even writes for old and derelict actors. Shall we take our drinks inside? Oh, no, I have a woman who comes and cleans now and again. She'll be here shortly to do these. Please?
That shows how recent our success is. I still can't get up from a table without reaching for a handful of dirty dishes.
Sit down, Bill. Well, suppose you're wondering why I imposed on you, asking to dine here this evening.
My husband had a sort of a theory, yes.
Carol.
Oh, don't worry, dear.
I see. You think then, Mr. Longsworth, it had to do with your play? I mean, my getting a part in it?
Well, since we seem to be getting terribly candid, something in that general area, yes.
That chair I had from the Zimmer for herself. It was in her production of A Doll's House in 1907. This fan belonged to Ada Rian. And I've saved the original script, my first lead on Broadway. Not much, you think, not much to have left after so many years. Well, enough sentiment. The reason why I asked you here tonight, I'm leaving the theater. You're saying to yourself, the old boy's been out of it for so many years now. What difference does it make whether he leaves or stays? But when you've been a little longer in the theater, Mr. Longsworth, you will discover that being in it does not only mean working in it. Being in it is to live for nothing else, as I have done. Well, I wanted to leave you my little museum, the chair, the fan, script.
But why me?
Because I thought you might be the one person who would appreciate them.
Why, we would be honored to accept them, Mr. Brankner.
Thank you, my dear.
Well, yes, of course.
I see you've noticed this.
Oh, yes. Is it from one of your plays?
No. No, it's something far more precious. Every stitch was put there by one of the most beautiful women I've ever known, Lila Gordon. Oh, then that name means nothing to you, I know.
Mr. Brankner, simply because we haven't lived quite as many years as you have, it doesn't mean that we don't know anything about the theater. I happen to have heard a lot about Lila Gordon. I'm sure my wife has, too.
I'm sorry. I suppose I forget how famous a star she became. No, but you would not remember the famous Charles Carside Company, which toured the country in 1918. We changed our bill every night and sometimes twice a day. Yes, and sometimes we changed our parts, too. I remember my friend Terry O'Bain and I reversed the parts of Othello and Iago on alternate nights for 2 weeks at a stretch. I remember particularly this one night in Buffalo when I was Othello. The night Lila Gordon joined the company and was my Desdemona. She was beautiful, fragile, adorable. I think I loved her from the first moment I saw her. But Terry loved her, too. I looked at him across the stage, And instantly we understood that our friendship was at last to find its test. For 2 months, Terry and I never spoke of our feelings. From city to city, bad hotel to worse hotel, drafty dressing room to draftiest stage, we traveled, both of us madly in love with Lila. At last, to resolve the matter, we did what now seems a frightfully romantic thing. We drew the petals from a rose. If there were an odd number of petals, then I was to ask Lila to marry me. If an even number, then it was to be Terry's privilege. There were 35 petals. That night after the performance, I poured out my pent-up feelings to Lila. She refused me. Oh, she was sympathetic, tender even. But she confessed it was Terry she loved. I was still in my costume, I remember, as I left Lila's dressing room and returned to the one Terry and I shared.
Oh, Mr. Brankner. Got a telegram here from Mr. O'Bain. Is he in his dressing room?
Yes, he should be.
Thank you, sir. Telegram, Mr. O'Bain.
Thank you, Bill.
Colin, you'll never believe it.
She said no. I'm sorry, Colin.
Anyway, there's one bright side to it. A surprise. A wonderful surprise for you.
Yes. Forgive me bursting out like this, particularly as I know how you feel, but look.
Well, sir, how many million is several million?
2, 3, 4, who knows, who cares? 17, 18, 19. $19 and I'm flush this week. Can you imagine even having $1 million?
I can't imagine it.
But who said it better than our good friend Iago? Faith, he tonight hath boarded a land carrack. If it prove lawful prize, he's made forever. Well, first I shall have to leave the show and go to New York and see those lawyers. Dear old Aunt Alice. Oh, I'm sorry she had to pass away to make all this come true. Colin, my dear Colin, I'll come back and rejoin the show just as soon as I've signed the necessary papers.
Lila's in love with you, Terry. She just told me.
This is too much. No, too much all in one evening. Would you tell me what she said before I go to her?
Please don't expect me to repeat more than I have already. She's loved you from the start, Terry. And imagine the first night she joined the company, you were playing Iago, who betrayed her.
And the next night, Othello, who strangled her.
How can one expect to learn the reasons for love? Accept it. Be grateful. But don't question it.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you.